So let's start with today's discussion. Hello, everyone. My name is Amit, and today we are going to be talking about um, metrics and monitoring. So we have had a lot of discussions in past where we talked about how do we work with containerized applications, how do we deploy them, how do we scale them up, scale them down, how do we use Kubernetes to deploy our infrastructure. But then one question remains unanswered, and that is how do you keep an eye on your applications, right? How do you ensure that your applications are running fine? Your applications are in a healthy state, they are responding in time, they are comfortable as far as the resources available on the servers go. So how do you ensure that? You ensure that by keeping an eye on the system, right? If you have 10 applications deployed across your cluster, then you have a system, right, with all graphs and everything, which can show you what's the state of each application, right? If there is something wrong in this application, for example, you see some red alerts or you see some red messages that hey, we feel like this application may be in danger. Either it's not working properly or maybe very soon it runs out of resources and it's going to crash. It can be anything. So how do we do that? So now to do this,
Sorry, screen is not visible, sir.
oh, screen is not visible. Oh no. Okay. Sorry about that. Because I cannot see the chat window. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir, now we can see. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for pointing it out. All right. So this is what I was telling. Yeah. I talked about my name, and then I was talking about that we will talk about metrics and monitoring, right? So what do we mean by monitoring? As I said, monitoring means keeping an eye on your applications. So if you have, for example, these 4 applications running on the cluster, you may also want to set up a central dashboard where you can display the current status, current health of your application. And this dashboard talks to each application, gets the current status of that application, and displays to you how that application is behaving. Right? If there is a problem with one of the applications like this one, then the dashboard displays that, hey, we feel like there is some problem. Right? So today we are going to just briefly look at the 2 technologies which we use to capture the information generated by all the applications. How do we capture the information, and then how do we visualize it? Right? So the information that we need to capture are called metrics. So if you have, let's say, you have 2 applications, right? And these 2 applications are, well, obviously web applications. We are talking about web applications here. Let's say this is app 1 or app A, and this is app B, right? Now, each application will generate some data about itself. For example, application A may generate data about for how long the application has been up and for what is their average response time. Right? So in how much time is this application responding? Application B also can generate similar data, right? For how long it has been up. What is the average response time? And also, for example, how many users have used this application till now, right? Any information about the application will be generated by these applications. Okay, these generated data are known as metrics. So these are the metrics generated by application A and application B. Textual data. These are generated by text. The capability of generating this data, this metrics, is the responsibility of the application development team. So the developers, the application developers, they add this capability that when application will run, it will generate this data. That is out of the scope of for DevOps, right? How the data is generated, that's out of the scope. Now, the devs get this capability inside the applications, and applications generate this data. Then, what do we do with this data? How do we access this metrics data? Well, this metrics data is exposed on your application's URL endpoint. For example, if you can access your application at www.skillupapp.com, for example, if you have this URL for your application, then somewhere on this URL, on some path, you should be able to get metrics. For example, slash metrics. If you go to the slash metrics path, you will be able to see your metrics, right? Or maybe for this application, www.anotherapp.com/data. Yeah, it depends on which URL endpoint the application is exposing the data, but there will be some endpoint. Okay, now you can log into this endpoint and see the metrics. You can see textually as a list of values that what is the uptime, what is the response time, how much memory is utilized, how much Java heap is utilized, how much is available, blah, 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 all the application information. And these metrics are generated at a particular point in time. Point in time. That means when you connect to this URL endpoint, you will see some information. And that metrics, that information metrics, is valid for that point of time. You come back 10 minutes later, there could be different metrics. You come back half an hour later, you could see a different metrics. At particular point of time, you could see that around 10 users are accessing the application. You check it next day, you will see that maybe 500 users are accessing the application. So the metrics is generated for a particular point in time. It's not a historical data, right? So when you access the metrics, you get the current right now state of application. Okay, this is the information. Now, why are we talking about this? Now, what our use case is that we want to see an historical data of, for example, let's say, how many users are accessing application B, right? Over time, over past 1 year, over past 1 year, how many users have accessed the application, right? So maybe in January, on an average, 50 people had accessed. In February, 500 people accessed. in March, maybe 200 people accessed. So we want to see a historical data of application usage, right? Now the metrics gives point in time data, but we want historical data. So what we want to do now is we want to capture this data regularly at maybe every 10 minutes, every 5 minutes, or every 10 seconds, or whatever. We want to store this data. Yeah, we want to store this data, and we want to store it in a way that it can be reused, right? So we store it like on Monday 1 o'clock, what was the data? On Monday 2 o'clock, what is the data? On Monday 3 o'clock, what is the data? So you take a snapshot of the metrics and keep it in the data. And based on the values that you capture, you generate these visualization. Right? So how do we do that? That's what we are going to talk about. So now let's talk about how this data is captured. So let's say we have these two applications, right? And both these applications are reachable on, let's say, www.appa.com, right? This is appa.com. And similarly, we have for another application, appb.com. So we have two applications now, appa and appb.com. And for appa.com, let's say, if we access slash data, we get the metrics. On app B, if we access slash metrics, then we get the metrics, right? So we have applications and we have the endpoints on which the applications are making their metrics available. And these metrics are point in time, right? So now we set up a scraper. We set up a scraper. Just give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second, guys. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Did I get disconnected? I had to rejoin. Okay, now let me share my screen again then. Okay, so now we are going to set up Prometheus to capture the data from applications, right? So what I'm going to do is, let's go to my AWS account. And I'll just pause my screen sharing for a second. Because I will log into my cloud account now. I will also let me do some repetition. So what we are going to do is, well, we are going to define this scraper here. Choose a different color. This scraper here, we are going to use this scraper to read these configurations, and then talk to the servers that are configured, talk to them, and gather the metrics from those servers and store them in the database. Okay? And with this database, we can later use it to visualize our data. So I'm going to now set this up. So let me go to my AWS account. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set up one system here. With maybe a little bit more power here. Yeah. And okay, no problem here. Uh, yeah, I'm going to create one system based on Ubuntu, which has one core and 2 GB of RAM, and that's all. So now on that system, I'm going to set up one application. And we all know that application. That application is going to be, maybe let's set up a web application which generates metrics. Okay, so now we have an application now, right? So I'm going to connect to it. Okay, this is strange. I do not get a public DNS. This is bad. Okay, give me a sec. Just give me 1 second. Let me choose a different region. So I'm going to choose a different region. Essentially, everything will remain same. And I'll just say enable all traffic. And then done. Now I'm going to connect to that machine. Let me zoom in so that you can have easy visibility. I will say this one and this one. So I'm going to SSH to my machine which I just created. Hopefully this works. All right, this machine works, right? I can also run some commands. All right, command is working fine. Now, on this machine, let's install Prometheus. I'm going to just search for Prometheus installation. And well, we can run it as a Docker application. Yeah. But what we are going to do is we are going to say, let's install it using pre-compiled libraries. So let's go to the download section. And what we are going to do is we are going to download the Linux version. Okay. So let's click on the library. It's going to download it. I don't want to do it on my Windows machine. So I'm just going to copy the URL. And on my Linux machine, I'll just say wget download this tarball, and it has downloaded. So in my current directory, I see this tarball is downloaded. Now let's unzip it. And it is being unzipped, right? We have this directory which contains Prometheus. Let's get into this directory. Let me clear the screen. And in this directory, you see something called as Prometheus and Prometheus.yaml. The first thing that I do is I just execute this Prometheus command. to Prometheus. I run this command and the server starts running. So my Prometheus application is running. Okay. Now on which port it is running? Generally it runs on port 9000, I guess, but let's see. I'm going to use my public IP address of the machine and let's route to port 9000. Nothing there. Okay, let's figure it out on which port it runs. (9090), right? It runs on port 9090. All right, server started 9090. And this is your Prometheus. This is your Prometheus server. This is a little bit GUI, but this is a Prometheus server. Now, let's go back to the architecture. What I said was Prometheus, this purple box, will have a scraper, this one. And this scraper, right? This scraper is going to read these configurations from here. And then based on the configuration, it's going to collect the metrics, right? Now let's see what configurations we have by default. So right now we have started the server, so it's running in the front end. I'll just say stop the server. And in my current directory, we have a file called prometheus.yaml. If I open prometheus.yaml, we will see a lot of configurations, right? And what I want to show you is the scrape config, which contains information about which websites are being scraped. So here it says that scrape a website which is on localhost :9090. That means scrape Prometheus itself. And on localhost port 9090 /metrics, our scrape data or metrics data should be visible, right? So that's what it is scraping here. And if you go up, it has configurations about at what interval the scraping should be done. So it says 15 seconds. Every 15 seconds, the metrics should be scraped. And every 15 seconds, retry the scraping if it doesn't work for the first time. So the retry amount is 15 seconds and scrape interval is also 50 seconds. Okay, so with this information, let's start the server again. The server runs. And if I go here, I see something here, right? Now, if I go to status and see configuration, I will see exact configurations which is defined in that YAML file. I will see this scrape config, which has this config, which is target is localhost 9090 from the metrics path. Maybe I'll zoom in a bit. From the metrics path /metrics, and it is called Prometheus. So Prometheus is monitoring itself. It is scraping its own data, right? Now, if I go to status and see targets, that's when I see, all right, the Prometheus is monitoring itself and it is monitoring it at this location, right? So if I browse this location is actually, well, it is localhost, right? So I cannot use localhost here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this URL and say it monitors Prometheus /metrics. And these are the metrics that Prometheus is monitoring right now about itself. Yeah. So, well, it has a lot of information. For example, let's say, So what has been the response sizes of various requests, right? Have there been, how many requests have been with the size 1000 KB or 1000 byte? Well, one request. How many requests have been with size 100,000 bytes? Well, one request, right? Then how many total bytes have been served on this API endpoint of the application? 284. Yeah. Then we have, for example, response time. Let's see response. So this is response. Let's go time. Let's search for time. Yeah. So how much time did the process take to restart? Right? How much bytes is the application using? So all this information is available as your metrics, right? We can also look for HTTP response times. There are so many metrics. I always press the back button. Maybe let's look for some metrics here. No interesting metrics here. Yeah, any, and that's fine. So yeah, HTTP request duration seconds, right? How much duration it took to respond. Okay, so this is the metrics that is collected here. And with Prometheus, we can now, if we go to the home page, we can browse the metrics. For example, if I say, if I want to browse this metrics here, the one which I have highlighted, and I say, yeah, well, show me the values for this matrix. Okay, it doesn't have this much. Maybe I have to not choose correct one. Yeah, response seconds bucket. Or maybe this one. So here you see, I get some metrics data. And this metrics data is about how much total HTTP response duration has been executed by Prometheus. So how much time it has spent in serving the data on slash metrics endpoint, how much time it has spent to serve the data on V1 query API. So how much time it has been spending here. And this is the metrics data. And this is the current data, but we can also say, show me in the graph about information about this data. And then you can see, if I show you the graph here by zooming in, maybe I'll just zoom in like this. So now you can see that some data has been constant, but some response data has been increasing slowly, right? So you can monitor over a due course of time how your application is behaving by keeping an eye on this data, right? So Prometheus does that. It just stores this data in a database because metrics are information in time. For example, these metrics are information in time. They look like this right now. But if I refresh the page, the metrics will change and the values will change. Okay. All right. So this is what Prometheus does. Let's take some questions now. And let's see, what kind of questions we have. I'm going to stop the screen sharing. Okay, there is one question. The question is, how can the application create these metrics data? Which libraries to be used? So Prometheus also provides guide on how you can enable your applications to produce metrics data. And that's called instrumentation. For example, let's say you have Java applications and you want to generate metrics data. So you can just search for Prometheus instrumentation in Java, and Prometheus has created client libraries which you can include in your Java application development and use it to generate metrics. So for example, here you can see you can define some dependencies. So Prometheus libraries are here. And then what you do is you import those libraries in your application and then just generate some sort of metrics here. Yeah, different kinds of metrics. So yeah, this is how you can enable your applications to generate metrics. Oh, screen was not visible. Sorry about that. The problem with enabling the screen is like whenever I come to this place, the screen goes like this, becomes crazy. So here, yeah, you can search for Prometheus instrumentation Java, for example, for Java, and define these dependencies, and then include the Prometheus libraries in your application and use them to generate your metrics data. Do we need to configure each metric manually? Yes, you do. Well, there are some standard metrics which can be automatically enabled from your libraries. But some metrics which are like very specific to your application, that those you have to enable. Any more questions? What is the difference between Prometheus and Kibana? Okay, Kibana is a visualization tool. So with Prometheus, what you get is this data. This data is stored, right? This data is stored. And with this graph, little bit you can visualize or see the data over time, but this is not very powerful. So we use another tool called Kibana, or you can use Grafana as well. Grafana works brilliantly with Prometheus. So you can use any of these tools to create some powerful graphs, some powerful visualizations, which allow you to visualize your data in a more comprehensible way. Is Prometheus and Thanos same? Thanos Snap, CNCF. I think Thanos is also available in CNCF. Let's see. Thanos is a highly available Prometheus setup with long-term storage capabilities. So Thanos is based on Prometheus. So you are right. Where do we configure database which Prometheus uses? So right now, Prometheus uses some inbuilt database, right? But Prometheus database. So in the same Prometheus.yaml, right? So if I go to this machine here, and if I stop the Prometheus server for now, what happened? I've lost the connectivity maybe. Yeah, so go to Prometheus directory, and you see here there is a folder called data. By default, it stores the data here. Yeah, it saves all the metrics data, scrape data here. But you can configure it to store it at a different location. Right? You can store it to third-party storage. So you can use third-party databases. You can use well, in the backend, it uses a special kind of database like time series database. It's not RDBMS, it's not NoSQL, it's called DSDB, which is time series database. So you can have that particular setup and then store the database or store the data in that particular database. Can we check the metrics for a specific part of the application? How many times a specific page was worked on? So the data which I showed you here, you see, it talks about individual API of the application. So how many times or how much time did the application spend serving HTTP requests at this API, or serving HTTP requests at /metrics, or serving HTTP requests at /root. So you can have very detailed metrics as well. How does Grafana help? What is the difference between Prometheus, Kibana? I think I answered these questions. Do we need to install Node Exporter? Node Exporter is used. So let's say you want to, instead of scraping the data from an application like we are doing from application A and B, maybe you want to capture some system information. Let's say there is a server, and this server you want to capture the CPU utilization, the memory utilization, and all that stuff, right? So the physical metrics. Then you can run an application called as Node Exporter, which runs a web application which exports the CPU resource information as metrics, and then you scrape that. That's all Node Exporter is. So if physical monitoring or resource monitoring is required, you use Node Exporter. Do we have alerting mechanism in Prometheus? Yep, we do. So by default, when you install Prometheus, you don't get alerts, but there is something called as Prometheus Alert Manager. By the way, I will just stop or delete this instance now. We are about to end the session. So I'm being charged for this instance. I'll just delete it. So there is something called as Alert Manager. And this Alert Manager allows you to send alerts based on some thresholds, right? So if the server is not reachable for capturing scraping, for capturing the scrape, then an email is sent, or it can alert on your like Microsoft Teams chat or WebEx chat. You can receive alerts anywhere. Depends on what your infrastructure supports. So Abhirup has a question that can we generate metrics like how much times a user has come back to the page, how much time a user has spent on a particular page. Now this capability has to come from your application, okay, not from Prometheus. Prometheus will just capture the metrics, but the generation of the metrics is applications or developers' responsibility. That's what I explained. Yeah, the developers enable the application to generate metrics. Now, if you can capture that data, that which users, how many users spending how much time, and did they come back to the application? Well, if you can export the data, then yeah, you have your metrics. Can you explain data flow or connectivity between Grafana and Prometheus from exporter? But exporter is a metric source. When you run Grafana, so now we have very less time left, but I'll just spend some time here. Grafana is a external visualizer tool. Yeah, so Grafana is used to create complicated graphs or pie charts, for example, or histogram. Right, so Grafana is used to create very complex visualization. The data source for the Grafana is the database of Prometheus. So you connect Grafana to Prometheus and then use Grafana to visualize your data. Okay. Can you scrape syslog logs into Prometheus? Maybe there is an application for that. Prometheus scrape syslog. Yeah, so maybe there is syslog exporter. Yeah, so please explore that syslog exporter, how you can work with Prometheus with syslog as well. Yeah. All right. So guys, that's all for today. We are already almost at the time. So the recording, I think, will be made available by SkillUpRight to you for your later reference. And I'm going to see you again later sometime. So see you. Thank you for your time today. And let's meet again. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the session, by the way. Thank you and bye.